The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Chantel, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to have Senator Bill Stanley with us today. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Woody. It's great to always be here. Finally, I get a solo shot with you. Usually I'm with somebody, so now it's just you and I for 30 minutes, mano a mano.
We're glad to have you.
Glad to
Tell
be
us a little bit about Franklin County. Besides yourself, there are a number of very important people.
We have, well, every citizen in Franklin County is very important. I mean, it's such a beautiful area. We've got, the beautiful town of Rocky Mount there. We've got Smith Mountain Lake. We've got rural areas. I live on a farm. The people, I always like to describe us in Franklin County as not only do we wave, we still wave at each other, whether we know each other or not when we pass on the highway, but we go a step further. We'll wave at you when you're sitting on your riding lawnmower and get to wave back. So we do that, and that just shows what a friendly place it is. But it's a birthplace of Booker T. Washington, great American educator, and fought for not only freedoms but for civil rights for our African American community. That's just one of many people that we have that have made Franklin County their home or their birthplace. And I tell you, Woody, I invite you down there anytime. We'll show you a good time. Great small businesses, great Chamber of Commerce we have. Vicki Gardner, who runs our chamber down there, of course, was involved in that tragedy, but
Right.
One of the greatest people I've ever met and known, and one of the great champions of Franklin County. So we've got it all, and we're growing. And for Southside, surprisingly, where unfortunately we have 10-15% unemployment, say in Danville, Henry County, Martinsville, surprisingly we have low unemployment in Franklin County. So we're very blessed with that. We're still trying to make sure that we create more jobs, but that's at least a good thing.
A pretty famous movie came out of Franklin County about the Bondurant brothers.
That Lawless, that's right. And as Franklin County would say, that was a little bit of an over-dramatization of what actually went on. But the Bondurant family certainly had a colorful history, and we are known as the wettest county in the world. There was a book, and that's what the movie was
Right.
based on, was that bestseller. We do have a reputation of civil disobedience, but we do so in a very polite way. And that comes from a lot of our Scottish backgrounds of those that were the settlers. The rumor has it that in Franklin County we were one of the few counties that didn't secede, but we never voted on it because we didn't think we had to. Government can be an impediment rather than a help. And a lot of people that live in our area, we are from the bootstraps up. We take care of ourselves and we take care of others. And I think when it comes to that attitude, sometimes government gets in the way. And so we like to make sure that that we don't have to have government. We don't need a handout. Sometimes we need a hand, but we'll do the rest ourselves.
How important is agriculture to your district?
Agriculture is huge. In fact, Woody, what we had was, at one time, we were the economic driver of Virginia with textile manufacturing, tobacco, and coal. We built Virginia economically, and of course we had the highest per capita income at one time, and certainly we brought a lot of revenue to Richmond when places like Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, places that I've lived growing up because my dad was in the Navy, were underdeveloped. But what happened was the federal government passed, and told us it was going to be great, passed laws of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, the Central American Free Trade Agreement, known as CAFTA, and they said, oh, it'll be good for business, don't worry. But what we saw when the federal government told us what they were going to do is we saw all our jobs go. We saw textile manufacturing go overseas. So we went from the highest per capita income in Virginia to now where we are the lowest per capita income. And what we've seen is a continuation of the government at the federal level trying to tell us what's good for us. And so now, many years ago they said tobacco was bad. We were the tobacco growing region, and the federal government was encouraging us and paying our farmers not to grow and making it harder to grow tobacco. So when that industry went away, of course, then that hurt our agricultural businesses. Now we're having a threat against coal with the EPA regulations basically saying coal is bad. I'm tired of the federal government, and I think a lot of people in Franklin County and around the area are tired of the federal government telling us what's good for us. And then what happens every time they say what's good for us, our jobs go away. So we're rebuilding, and without agriculture, I think our economy at that level would have been shattered. It's the backbone of our economy. The small farmer is one of our most cherished assets. And if we didn't have the agricultural business, billions of dollars a year, in my district alone, employs thousands of people, produces a lot of local government revenue. If we didn't have that, then we probably would be even further down. Right now, Woody, our per capita income for a household, and that's a family of four, is $28,000.
$28,000.
$28,000. The state average is $63,000, and think in Northern Virginia, it's $98,000 average. So that's quite a disparity. And only 20 years ago, we were above in terms of per capita income than those other areas. So it's a challenge, but without agriculture, we wouldn't be anywhere or have the ability really to rebuild as we are now.
And of course, you've helped in terms of that rebuilding, and especially in agriculture, as a result of a bill that you helped pass, AFID. Talk to us about that.
Well, I was put on a workforce commission for small business by Governor McDonald, and we were throwing around ideas of how we could help small businesses grow. And one of the issues was, how do we make small farms grow? And how do we get the localities involved? And so what came out of that work group was the Agriculture, Forestry, Industrial Development Fund, kind of like the Governor's Opportunity Fund, where the governor gives grants to businesses to come into Virginia and hire Virginia workers. But it's for agriculture and forestry. And what it really stresses is processing. What we see a lot of times in our farms is we grow it, we harvest it, and then we send it somewhere else for processing. What this allows is a public-private partnership with a business and perhaps and the local government to come together to make sure that what's grown here is processed here. And we saw one of the first grants go to Homestead Creamery, which is the best milk you'll ever drink, and you'll find it on your shelves at Kroger. It comes from Franklin County.
Oh, really?
And and it's a great business, and what we were able to do was expand their processing plants. So now, instead of a regional item that we all love, and the ice cream's great too, by the way, and I have no affiliation with them, but everybody where we're from, we love Homestead Creamery, and they deliver. They're one of the few milk producers that will deliver to your home. But now, that regional love that we had for that item, that product, that industry, has now grown statewide and beyond because we were able to expand their processing of it. So that's just one way of how the APHID bill works, but it's a great success. We're now going to use that for a hops processing plant up in Northern Virginia. And there's a bill that I put in for farmers to grow what they need, the wheat, the barley, the hops, and have it be a tax-free event if they grow it here and then sell it to some of our craft breweries here in Virginia.
And I think hemp is another product they're going to be able to grow.
Yeah, well, we have now come around and seen that industrial hemp, not related to marijuana, is a new product and a new thing which we have to get ahead of for our farmer to grow. It's a very profitable crop. It's an easy crop to grow. And I think can be used in any products from rope to clothing to they even make hemp shakes. So that is a very exciting thing for our farmers, so they can diversify what they're growing in their fields and use more of their fields through the season.
Now, what about grapes? The production of grapes, because I understand the wine industry is really growing in the Commonwealth.
We've got two industries I think that have been really growing at a rate that is surprising but also good. And the first was a winery. I hear all the time that the people in California are drinking Virginia wines, and that says something. And we're exporting a lot of that. So the vineyards are growing in strength and in number and in quality. And so with that kind of production, because as Thomas Jefferson noted at the top of that little mountain in Monticello, Virginia was going to be a good place to grow grapes that could be used for wine. And now we're seeing his dream for Virginia agriculturally come to fruition. But also we've seen the secondary market of craft brewery. Senator Jeff McWaters and I put a bill together which would allow craft breweries to sell their product without having to have the ABC food thing, much in the same way that the wineries had. From that bill, what we've seen is an explosion of craft beer. And so I support that industry greatly, and you have people taking tours. But what we don't have in support of that is the craft brew houses have to buy their hops, their malt, their barley in Oregon. And that's after the big guys like InBev and Miller Coors take up all the, they buy the futures for say hops and those kind of products. And so they're left with maybe a lower graded hop, but a higher price hop. So what I'm trying to do in my bill that I have now is say, if you grow it here, because a hops vine takes 3 years to grow, then when you sell it to that craft brew house, you can do so and not pay state taxes on it. And that way it encourages the farmer to further diversify and enter into new markets. It helps our craft breweries, which are growing. People are coming down and taking tours. And quite frankly, we might be the Napa Valley for craft beer by the time it finishes. I would love to see that happen.
Now, you mentioned exports, and I know the current governor and the former governor were real big proponents of exporting products and services abroad from the Commonwealth of Virginia, soybeans, for example, to China. So there are a lot of positives there, but I understand there's a negative too in relation to coal, because a lot of the coal that went through the Port of Virginia overseas obviously is not going there anymore.
That's right. Well, in the first part of what you're talking about, I think we have to understand fundamentally as Virginians that we need to participate in the global marketplace. And the best way that we can open our businesses and our industries and our farmers to new marketplaces is overseas. We import so much from overseas, we need to export. We need to make sure that there's not a trade deficit for Virginia to where we're trading more with our partners overseas than we're bringing in. That means a healthy economy. But one of the big disappointments we've seen is that the coal that used to travel out of the coal fields down through the Coalfield Expressway on rail and onto the port, that those numbers have shrunk enormously because of federal regulations. Just in Roanoke, we lost 500 jobs of Norfolk Southern. 500 jobs because they weren't hauling the coal in the numbers that they were before. That's a real detriment, because we're not just talking about 500 people either being relocated or losing their job. We're talking about the ripple effect that it has for small business, for the mom and pop store, for the restaurants. Those people now are missing that kind of revenue that would naturally come to them with those 500 good paying jobs there. On top of that, it's a struggle for them for the locality. And that ripple effect not only hits Roanoke, but it also hits into Southside Virginia as well. It is a real harm that's happening there. Even in the Southwest coalfields, over 1,000 jobs have been lost. And you're talking about $60, $70, $80, $90,000 a year in that region, and the ripple effect of that. When there's too much federal regulation, when the federal government tells us what we can and cannot do with our own natural resources, we pay the price. Virginia pays the price, but that mom and pop store, that citizen right there at the local level, pays the heaviest price. We've got to stop that.
Now, there's a move towards more regional cooperation, this Go Virginia initiative. Is that something that will have a positive effect in your district?
Absolutely. I think because what it joins is public government at the local and state level with private partnerships. It's really our corporations, our chambers getting involved in invigorating that economy. You know, Woody, I like to say the private sector, government has never created a job in the private sector. We can create government jobs, but we can't create private sector jobs. We can create an environment, though, that allows those private sector jobs to occur, grow, flourish, and increase in number. So what we're seeing now is that if we can create the environment here in Richmond, statewide, to make this a great place to conduct business, then the private sector is coming in to help with infrastructure, entrepreneurship, education. You've got a partnership and a recipe for success. For us in Southside and Southwest Virginia, that necessarily means Interstate 73. That means workforce training, which we've been really focusing on at our community college levels, and really even more. We're going in now into the high schools and the elementary schools, and really trying to get them ready for the new economy, the global economy. So I think Go Virginia is an exciting proposition. I know we have in our budget set aside, the governor's done it, we're supporting it to fund that initiative. But in our area, it's really, I think, where they need to go first, and I've been advocating that because we have a diversified economy. We're not so dependent on the federal government, and we have the biggest room to grow. And just a little investment can go a long way where we're from.
So it sounds like you can be a model for the rest of the state as the Commonwealth weans itself away from the largesse of the federal government.
Absolutely. And, you know, I said earlier that I'd lived all over the state, my dad being in the Navy. In the early 70s, we were in Virginia Beach, in that area when he was a pilot, and there's just ships and planes. Military Highway was a 2-lane road. Now I think it's 6-lane. Northern Virginia, we moved in 1978. And the number one industry up there was dairy. Dairy. Can you imagine? In that time, over that course of time, that area has grown exponentially but it's grown because the federal government has grown. And likewise, then our state budget has grown. But our state budget has now become more dependent on federal government, direct federal government payments to it, as well as the tax revenues that we generate from those federal workers or the federal contractors or the military industrial complex that's up in there. If you see a downturn in this in the federal spending, we're the first ones that get hit. Think about it this way, Woody. In terms of the states that are most dependent on federal money, the number one state is Alaska. The number two state is Virginia. That to me, I have a lot of concern about that fact.
Yeah, I think I saw a number that suggests that 13 out of the top 20 employers in the Commonwealth are related to government.
That's
primarily the federal government.
That's right. And right now we're looking at a federal government 17, 18, 19 trillion dollars in debt, however you want to do it. A lot of unfunded liabilities in the future. Spending seems to be out of control. They don't seem to rein in the spending that they have. At some point, you got to pay the price. You know, you and I, we balance our budgets. We do what we have to do for our family, but we don't spend more than we have. The federal government seems to have no such prohibition, no such guard against that. If at some point that price has to be paid, Virginia's going to suffer. So that's why it's important that we diversify our economy. And the Go Virginia initiative is a great way to do that. We need to try to wean ourselves off of those federal dollars that we're so addicted to. But we're in Franklin County, in South Side and Southwest Virginia, the Roanoke Valley, we're diversified. We don't have the military industrial complex. We don't have the federal contractors. What we have is a great workforce of people eager to get back to work and a lot of beautiful area. And let me tell you, having lived in Northern Virginia, watched it grow, and being down in Franklin County now, there's no comparison that Franklin County in our area is the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. And you can actually, when you're in commuting for 20 minutes, you go 20 miles.
Yes,
you don't go 2.5 miles.
Right.
And if we have a traffic jam, it's usually a log truck that you're behind.
There is a critical need there in terms of transportation, however, something you've worked on since you've been a member of the General Assembly, and that's I-73. Talk to us about I-73.
I-73 was a concept, Interstate 73, a federal concept of bringing a highway from the three deep water ports of Wilmington, North Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina, and Savannah, Georgia, through the south of South Carolina, North Carolina, into the interior of Virginia, onto West Virginia, through Ohio, into the northernmost tip of Michigan at Sault Ste. Marie. Portions of I-73, 74, and 75 have been built in South Carolina and North Carolina, North Carolina having built the most of it. We've not, until just recently, had the fever to build I-73. South Side and Southwest has always wanted it, but it always seemed to never get enough attention here in Richmond and never get enough attention in Washington, D.C. When I was elected, I promised that we would see I-73 built in our lifetime. Because when it's built, Woody, it's going to bring 53,000 permanent jobs to my region.
53,000.
53,000. I like to say if you want a jobs program, I-73 is a jobs program. It will pay for itself in 10 years. It's a $4 billion project. But it will bring $700 to $900 million annually to our local governments to pay for public education and public safety and to do everything we need to get done. Plus, it will increase the number of people that are here. That will also bring businesses. It gives business a great opportunity to get their product to the deep water ports to go into the global marketplace. It brings connectivity to our economy so that we can absolutely be connected to the interior of the United States economy all the way to the far reaches of the world through those ports down there in South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. And it regionalizes our economy with those other states. So I am determined to do that. I'm the chairman of the I-73 Transportation Study Committee. We've now shown why we should build it. Our last part of the committee study this year will be how we're going to build it and how we're going to pay for it. Made sure that a federal interstate compact, which is a partnership between the states, a bill that I wrote that passed last year, has now been passed by the federal government and approved in the federal transportation highway bill. So now we're having the other states, we're going to join together and strategically learn how we're going to build this highway. And now we've even got it at the local level, from Henry County, Martinsville, Franklin County, all the way to the Roanoke Valley, lobbying the state and lobbying the federal government to make sure we get the funds and that they know that this is a priority for our future economy. So I'm very excited about it.
Great. Certainly a long-term project, though.
It is. It's probably will take 9 to 10 years to build. It will need some funding strategies that are across the spectrum. where there'd be federal grant money, bonding at the state and federal level, also some commitments from the localities. One of those mechanisms is a bill that I put in place. We have an Route 58.
Yes.
A.L. Philpott put a statute in that will pay for the widening of Route 58. When that's complete in about 15 years, my bill will transform that into the I-73 Transportation Fund.
I see.
So that way we continue that funding into the locality. What bothers me, Woody, is that when we had the great economy 20 years ago in Franklin County and Southside Virginia, over those past 20 years, $6 billion has gone to new interstate road construction to Northern Virginia. Over $4 billion has gone to Hampton Roads for new interstate road construction. In the Salem district, which is a large district, even bigger than my Senate district, $900 million. Now, where the road money has gone, so have the jobs. So it's time that the local governments fight for and tell the state government and the federal government that it's time for us to have what we're due in terms of building our own infrastructure. That's $10–11 billion to those regions. Well, we got not even $1 billion for new infrastructure. So that makes the $4 billion not sound so big after all.
I take it, however, that the criteria that was set forth in House Bill 2, which focuses primarily on congestion mitigation then, is the reason for that delta between what Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and your district is getting?
It is now, and you know, I voted for HB 2 because I thought with the scoring level, the two that they, you know, one of the factors that they look for, the most important is economic development. And then congestion. Well, we score high on economic development, 53,000 jobs. But congestion, we don't have any. You know, we have more miles of roads in our area. They have more density of traffic. And so sometimes those assessments are skewed because then what you're seeing are high-rated projects which really don't move the needle, but because it's a congestion project up in Northern Virginia, it gets a priority. Where for us, an I-73 would normally, I would think it would be at the top of the charts. Well, quite frankly, their system doesn't register. I must confess that after seeing it in play, I think it's rigged for Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia, and I think it's rigged against the rural areas. There is a formula by which we get highway money. That formula is number of miles of road. That's the only thing that brings parity or any of those dollars to us. They've tried a couple of years ago to change it to density of traffic, number of miles traveled, not number of miles of roadway. To do that would be devastating to our infrastructure. So we've got to hold on to what we have. I think you're going to see HB 2 change and transform and evolve. You know, I looked at it. Our number one project is building a sidewalk on a bridge. That's the highest score we have. That's not right because there are many transportation projects, including 58 widening to 4-lane in Patrick County, that would be more important than building a sidewalk on the side of a highway bridge.
Well, you had a bill that just passed the Senate, Senate Bill 4, that evolved because I know you carried it last year, but you had to make some changes. And it keeps people who are convicted of misdemeanors and nonviolent crimes out of jail, so to speak. They're able to spend time over the weekend so that they can keep their jobs. Tell us about how important that is.
It's really important. As a defense lawyer in Franklin County, I can tell you I've seen it more often than not. People that make mistakes, and they do, we're human beings, can be charged with felonies and misdemeanors that require, as a part of their punishment and paying their debt to society, them to serve jail time. But many times people are already employed. And so when they go in for that period, that stretch up to 120 days, they'll lose their job. And they won't get it back when they get out because usually that employer has to go hire somebody else. Well, what happens in our zeal to seek justice is we've created a bigger problem because that person who may have been convicted, and it's only for nonviolent felonies, drug offenses usually, or misdemeanors, and with the permission of the Commonwealth's attorney and the judge, what it allows them to do is keep their job or keep their job training program in place to do what they need to do, not lose it. Because if we don't and they lose their job, two things happen. One, they become wards of the state. They go on public assistance. So that's taxpayer money. Two, they have to, it's what we call recidivism, that to put food on the table for their family, they go back to a life of crime. This helps them pay their debt to society, but still be a productive member of society, which is really important.
Now, I know you've been a critic of the Affordable Care Act / Obamacare, but you've also been very creative in terms of providing rural health services to the members of your the constituents in your district. Talk to us about some of those initiatives.
I never thought that I would take such a keen interest, but I have, and now every year I try to propose reforms to rural health care. We have a problem. Our problem is we don't have enough primary care physicians. The average age of a primary care physician in my district is 56 years old. For every 2 that we lose to retirement or moving away, we don't even get 1 back by average. So we're shedding doctors. Access also, we may be 60, 70, 80 miles away from the nearest hospital or doctor. So that way, we can't get to a affordable quality health care. It's a drive. People say, I'll get around to it later. And by the time they get around to it, they're in an acute condition in a serious matter. What my bills are trying to do is bring the medicine and the treatment to the patient. One is a medical, patient-centered medical home council that helps collaboration with doctors that may be at VCU or maybe at UVA, coming in using telemedicine, telemental health to bring quality doctors into the home of the patient for preventative care and for management of their care and for even diagnostics. So that way, that person has access, just like they have access to the internet or their phone. Doc in a box, sometimes they call it, and that, I think, is one thing that we're trying to do. The other is helping our nurse practitioners, helping them be able to treat our patients, because we're not getting the doctors down there. And until that changes, we need to make sure we have affordable care with a great result and a low cost.
And what about students in medical school? Is there a way to expose them to your district?
Absolutely. 2 bills. One last year that I passed creates a scholarship program where a doctor who agrees to work in a medically underserved or underprivileged area or a rural area, they're usually coming out of med school with an average in Virginia $166,000 in debt. Well, Virginia will pay off that debt over the 5-year period for them if they dedicate their practice in a rural area. That way we can recruit them, and in 5 years, and they'll see how beautiful the area is, because we may not be able to pay them what Northern Virginia pays, but we'll be able to keep them. They'll stay there and because they'll put down roots. The second bill that I have that's just gotten out of committee this morning, unanimously, was that now we take our medical students, they do rotations, residency rotations when they're in med school, and require them to do at least 1 rotation in a medically underserved area or the underprivileged or rural area to go into those hospitals. And in doing so, those hospitals in our area get a chance to recruit them and to show them why they need to practice in Southern Virginia. Any tool that we can use in the toolbox that's going to help bring those doctors here, that's what I think about, and those bills try to innovate that and get that started.
Great. We'll have to end it there. It's been a pleasure again having you here, Senator Bill Stanley, Chairman of Local Government.
Thank you. Thank you, Woody.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Chantel. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.